Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today we have 3 brand new stories for you. Let's start with Petty Revenge one. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. And our first story. Mess with me, will ya? So for starters, I'm really a chill and laid-back guy. Today's my birthday, and I was heading into the office and decided to treat myself to a McDonald's coffee. I know you're already impressed. Birthday and all, and I'm splurging by getting coffee from McDonald's? What can I say? I'm pretty GD boring. Anyway, going through the drive-thru, and it's one of the divided ones where the lines are supposed to stagger in a zipper fashion so as to promote efficiency and not F up the orders. So I choose the inside lane and make my order at the speaker box. The car on the outside lane is already ordered, and I wave her on in front of me. There's a slight pause at the window, apparently, and when she goes, the car directly behind her, some C in a white Honda, just darts in directly behind her, almost clipping my front end, all the while blasting her effing horn and glaring at me like I just slapped her effing kid or something. Typically, I would respond in kind to that sort of thing, but I run a business in this fairly small town, and you never know who's watching. So I just smiled at her, which seemed to have pissed her off even more. Just then, I remembered my son's girlfriend was working the window, so I called her cell and told her I was in line. I asked her to take a look at the white Honda and please give her the royal treatment. When the woman got to the window, she was told that her order would take a few minutes and could she please pull over to the waiting area and they'd bring it right out. I could hear some of the exchange at the window and could make out she was none too happy. As I passed by her while sipping my coffee, I politely waved. I got a text back later in the morning from my son's girlfriend that they got her order wrong 3 times. Yes, that was petty, but I do feel pleasantly vindicated by this event. Indeed I do. Happy birthday to me. Literally the one benefit of living in a small town, knowing exactly who to contact to mess with another person's crap. And our second story. My manager accused me of theft, then he got fired. Way back in the early 2000s, I worked at a Blockbuster Video in the UK. It wasn't my first job, but I was still in high school when I started, so it was near as, damn it. I had a pretty good working relationship with my boss and quickly moved up the ranks to one of the deputy managers. I was the person the manager would call to cover shifts, and honestly, unless I had a really good reason, I always did the extra because I actually really liked the job. I'm a film nerd, so I loved spending my working days talking to customers about movies. It also didn't hurt that I could rent any movie anytime for free. So this one particular Saturday, we were slammed. 3 staff members called in sick, we had a big new release movie that week, and we had a big computer game release on the Friday too. So it was manic. Halfway through my shift, a guy comes in and says he bought a game the week before from the store and that he wanted a refund. He said I had served him but hadn't given him a receipt. Now, I did remember serving the guy, but couldn't remember what he bought, and frankly, even though it's automatic to give receipts, I couldn't guarantee I had. The problem was that specific game was the only copy we apparently had. Our inventory said it was in store, but this guy had it, so somehow it had left the store without being processed. Either it had been stolen by this guy, it was some kind of error on my part, or I had actively given it to him and pocketed the money. To be clear, these are options from an objective POV. I never stole from that job, so I definitely didn't do the last. My manager was working with me, so he refunded the guy, took the game back, and then for the rest of the shift didn't speak to me once. As we closed the store that night, the manager took me into the office and proceeded to accuse me of stealing. Without evidence, he said I had sold that game and pocketed the money. I obviously denied the claim. Things got heated, and it ended with him telling me to hand in my notice 2 weeks. So I did. I was heartbroken because I loved the job and I knew I was innocent. I may have given it by accident, but I would never knowingly steal. So 2 weeks later, my notice period is up, and on my last shift, coincidentally, the area manager comes in. Now, I had quite a good relationship with the AM. I'd been hired by them originally, and it was frequently noted by them that I always seemed to be on shift when they came in. They asked me how I was, and I said that I was sad I was leaving. They didn't know this, so asked why. I explained the situation, and they immediately went to the office. Half an hour later, I get called to go to the office. The AM sat with the CCTV footage from the day the man said he'd bought the game. In the video, it showed me serving him. Then as he left, he had a chat with the store manager. No sound on the CCTV, but they were clearly chatting. The manager was working in new inventory, ready to put out on the shelf. For some reason, the manager turned his back on the customer for a few moments, and as plain as day, the customer reached over the counter, grabbed something, and left. The AM assumed this was the game. While the manager was called in, he was asked why I had given him my notice when the accusation against me deserved a meeting with the AM and my immediate dismissal if I was guilty. The manager just stuttered something about not wanting to make a big deal. Then the AM asked the manager to explain what happened in the CCTV after showing it. The manager just sat quietly. Well, anyway, the AM asked me at this point to rescind my notice, which I did, though I cannily asked for a few extra paid holidays because I felt embarrassed by the theft accusation, and the AM agreed. The AM then said they would be taking the month's worth of CCTV footage to have it looked over because this act of negligence by the manager was a cause for concern. The blood ran from the manager's face at this point, but nothing further was said. I finished my shift and walked out with the AM to enjoy my week off. 3 days later, I got a phone call from the AM asking if I could meet him at the store that day. I obliged. When I arrived, the AM took me to the office and told me there had been a situation. During the CCTV checks, it had become apparent that the manager had been using the store for other reasons. One, a number of nights over the course of a month, he closed the store, then after the staff had gone, he'd invited people in. One night he'd held a poker game in the staff room. Later we found out he'd been using the money from the tills to cover his losses and putting through refund notices to cover it. And on 3 other occasions, he was seen bringing in women to his office. Now, the women were known with not the best reputation. The manager was also married. Well, the manager was automatically suspended while there was an investigation, and the reason I was brought in was to be asked to run the store in his absence. After the investigation was complete, it turns out the manager had been giving away thousands of pounds of refunds per month and falsifying who gave the refunds so it didn't look suspicious. This had gone on for years in multiple stores that he'd worked in. So because he accused me of something I didn't do, he lost his job and his marriage. And I got a promotion with a lovely raise. Good on you. I'm kind of wondering now if the manager intended to point the finger at your long-departed self if and when any of his own fraud was detected. And our last story. Grandfather's brother exploits dying mother. Grandfather buys land to make the estate worthless. This story's about my grandfather and how he outsmarted his brother after his brother exploited their mother. About 40 years ago, my great-grandparents were dying. Great-grandfather was gone, and great-grandmother was on her way out, abusing morphine to lessen the pain. She was writing a will when she was sober, but she was rarely sober. Her estate was essentially what would be a multi-millionaire's estate adjusted for inflation. Her estate was in Ireland, while my grandfather and his brother were in England. My grandfather went to his local pub to see brother. He did this every Saturday night to keep in touch with his brother. This time, something was different. His brother was not there. Instead, his brother spontaneously moved to Ireland and spent time with his mother, who was heavily on morphine. The morphine was clouding her judgment, and bear in mind she was writing a will. My grandfather's brother, we'll call him Lee from now on, went to Ireland to cozy up to his mother in hopes of getting her whole estate. My grandfather didn't know Lee was doing this and didn't think much of it. Fast forward about a year and great-grandmother kicks the bucket. Funeral day arrives and everything goes fine until they get to the will. Great-grandmother was high on morphine when she was making the will, and everything she had put in the will went to Lee. Nobody else got anything in the will. Put 2 and 2 together and everyone was PO'd at Lee, but the will couldn't be contested because there were people who signed in witness of the will, including her attorney. Lee becomes outcasted, but everyone gives up on trying to save their mother's things. Except Granddad. Lee inherited a large plot of land in Ireland. Nothing special except it was in rural Ireland and couldn't support a septic tank and is worth a F-ton of money. The house on this plot was right on the edge of the land, but the septic tank was on the neighbor's land. Lee didn't know this, so he didn't buy the land next to the house. This isn't up to building code, so the house can't be sold until the septic tank is on his land. My grandfather knew this and bought the land surrounding this house. Lee fixed up the house and got a building inspector to inspect the house and check it was up to code so he could sell the house. The inspector caught the septic tank and told Lee he couldn't sell the house unless the tank is on his land. Lee went to the neighbors to buy the small plot of land that had the septic tank, only to find out they sold it to my grandfather, and my grandfather was unwilling to sell the land to Lee. Lee invested easily over £300 before Ireland went to euro in the house, so the house was in great shape and was supposed to be resold. Lee can't sell the house for a profit because my grandfather owns the land the septic tank is on. Lee can't put a septic tank on his land because the land can't support a septic tank. My grandfather put Lee into a checkmate where Lee has to sell the land and everything on it to my granddad. My grandfather isn't going to buy the land for anything more than £5,000, and to this day, Lee still won't sell the land to my grandfather. My grandfather didn't want the land, he just wanted to return the favor to Lee. Lee's now just scraping by on his plot of land because of his stubbornness, and he still to this day won't accept defeat. Nice revenge. It's kind of sad that Lee did that to his family, ruining relationships for some money. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.